A lot of people watched it, but nobody's watching day to day, all day, unless you're me and just love this stuff. Procedures are okay, but we want to know, where do you stand? And so I think the more that politicians stop trying to be politicians and be people, then that will engage voters. We reject alternative facts, so come on in here and let me educate you on the facts. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Q with Q. This is our daily political briefing with me, QuentinRJiles, or just call me Q and we're going to be friends. Guys, I am super excited to be here with you all today. It has definitely been a long weekend. Feels like I haven't talked to you all in forever. And now we're back and it's Monday. Yes, a lot is going on, from the incoming inauguration to potential pardons and shenanigans tomorrow, to just who knows what else, right? People still getting arrested for their insurrection attempt. We're finding out people didn't stole Nancy Pelosi's computer, was going to sell it to Russians. That's a whole storyline we're going to have to dig into. But today is MLK Day, Martin Luther the King Jr. Day. And for me, I didn't do too much posting today on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, my normal socials. Not that I was necessarily taking the day off, or maybe subconsciously I was. But I posted a video. Hey, Jamaica, I posted a video. What's going on, Dontrell? I posted a video from Martin that he was doing. He was doing an interview, or I posted a clip of an interview he did with NBC 11 months before he was assassinated. And I, was scrolling through the comments, and some people, particularly my white followers, shout out to y'all, the allies in the room, were like, man, I never saw this. And right, because everybody talks about I have a dream. Like, that's everyone's go-to, and particularly politicians who will quote Martin but won't push forward the agenda that he fought for. And so tonight's show is going to be a little different than what we're used to. I'm hoping that you stick with it and stick with me throughout tonight's show. I know there are families that are watching. I know children. Some people watch with their children. And so I thought that this would be very illuminating if we do the show this way. So I am going to be engaging. What's going on, Blair? Lakeithia Thomas. Hey, Karen Elizabeth Lindsay. J Foods. What's going on, Robin Haynes? I'm going to be in the comments tonight talking a lot with you all, which is going to be like, what do you mean? Because you're normally talking and you read. So you'll see as we progress. But before we get into that, I always got to drop links. Let me drop the link, baby. Golden Gummies. They're giving 20% off if you use my promo code. Then you get an extra 5%, which means you get 25% off. Okay, so go get you that 25% off. Hey, what's going on, Sierra? Go get you that 25% off. Also, the Patreon, Brittany in the morning. Brittany, I enjoyed our one-on-one today. I can't wait for us to do another one after you watch that video that I sent you. If you want to do one-on-ones with me, one-on-one Zoom calls where we kind of talk. Wilson said your Golden Gummies came in today. That's what's up. That's what's up. We love to see you. Hey, Tammy Thurston. Let's see. Fanika, order Joe Goalies. That's what's up. Thank y'all. If you want to do one-on-one Zoom calls, the link that I just posted, you can join the Patreon. There is some new content, new tiers on there. So even if you're not sure that you want to join it, just check it out on the page. It is a monthly membership subscription, but you get to decide, what tier you want. I added 2 new tiers to the Patreon. So one is going to be the bodybuilding journey, and then the other is something called the family. And I think you should just go check out Patreon. Tammy Thurston joined the family earlier, the family tier. And maybe I should just talk about it. It's really going to be a space where we kind of surround each other. So we're going to have like these monthly conversations, monthly or twice a month, just depending on what the need is, where we really talk about life. We talk about hard-hitting things that are going on, past traumas. It's not therapy, but we're just going to be talking about it. How did we overcome? Be a support system. What are some things we're looking out for or trying to accomplish in the future? And so we're going to be holding Zoom calls to where everyone gets a chance to talk. It won't just be me. So definitely check that out. That is on the Patreon. Janae, thank you so much for the super sticker. Appreciate it. The people are saying hit the like button too if you're watching on YouTube. Yes, please hit the like button. Ray Anthony, I'm ordering Wednesday. Can't wait to see what the ashwagandha hitting like. Yes, the ashwagandha. So definitely, guys, make sure you join the Patreon. Great content coming over there. Just drop the link again. And if you're already on the Patreon, check out the new tiers. You may want to change tiers. So now we got that out of the way. Again, dissent, not disrespect. I got questions. Oh, I need to join the family. Yeah, come join the family on Patreon, the family. Look at the tiers. I'm gonna thank you so much. Let me put the banner up. Also, if you'd like to just pour into me directly and not give a super comment or a super sticker, you can do that right there, the Cash App, PayPal. Some of you all have been doing that. I appreciate that. That is direct payments as opposed to YouTube taking a cut, but you know, it is what it is. So I appreciate that. Jaquinta, hey, love the new tier. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, definitely check it out. Check it out. Okay, guys, so we're going to get into tonight's show. Like I said, it's definitely going to be a little different. I encourage you to stick with it all the way through. Hey, Crystal Osborne, stick with it all the way through. And we are actually going to talk on the other side. What I want to do is actually play the full interview of the video that I posted today. I posted like a 2-minute, oh, you got your merch. Crystal says she got her merch. Get your merch. I posted a 2-minute video on the TikTok and Patreon, on the TikTok, Twitter, Instagram of that Martin Luther King interview. But I think we really need to watch the full thing. It's about 23 minutes. I'll still be here on the screen. And I want you to be asking yourself the things that Martin was fighting for. Because we had the I Have a Dream speech, and you know, so many people love to quote Martin, but not push his agenda forward, not push what he fought forward. And I want you to see if some of the things that he's talking about in this video, are we still talking about that today? We may have different language, right? Because language evolves over time. But are we talking about the same things, or have we achieved those things? Those are questions that I want you to be asking yourself, and particularly those that watch with their families. Thank you so much again for doing that. I don't take that lightly. I think it's going to be a great conversation starter. I also want to read a tweet before we get into this that Bernice King tweeted today, who is the daughter of Martin Luther King Jr. She says, "Please don't act like everyone loved my father. He was assassinated." For my young kids watching, he was assassinated, meaning he was killed. A 1967 poll reflected that he was one of the most hated men in America. Most hated. Many who quote him now and invoke him to deter or to stop or to delay justice today would likely hate him and may already hate the authentic king. I love that she said the authentic king, because his legacy and the work that he was doing in the movement and the people around him have almost become a caricature, have almost been, let's have peace. That's what Dr. Martin Luther King called for. It was a whole lot of stuff he called for as well. Whole lot of stuff. And in no way, let me say this, in no way am I saying King is like Jesus, but I have to say this, in many ways, people quote Jesus only to fit certain things, but don't want to quote everything. Those words that brought conviction, those words that condemn sin. And so when we look at Martin Luther, he was a Christian man. We see what has happened last week with the insurrection of people, something that I didn't even notice. My pastor pointed out, not only were people running there with Trump flags and the Confederate flags, was running in there with banners talking about Jesus saves and Bibles. Jesus does save, but he ain't say do that. And so was Martin Luther a perfect man? No. Absolutely not. If you know the full story, baby, he put Coretta through the ringer here. But I want us to really, like his daughter said, see the authentic king, not the caricature or the sound bites of free at last, thank God Almighty, we're free at last, or I have a dream that one day, like, yes, he said that, but it was some other stuff he said too that ain't being done, that gets pushed back when we have people in leadership positions in Congress who would vote against a John Lewis voting rights bill, a voting rights act to ensure every American has equal access to the ballot, who would vote against or stonewall a George Floyd policing act to ensure that the people of this country are not targeted, harassed, and killed by those that are entrusted to keep the peace. The two things don't add up. So what I want to do is watch this interview. Like I said, I hope that you all stay to the end and we'll have a little bit of dialogue on the other side, okay? Thank you so much for bearing with me.
Straight, Civil Rights, King, MLK, roll 20, sound 36.
Dr. King, this church is as good a place as any to go back over your commitment to the civil rights movement. When you went out from here into university and then you went to Montgomery, Alabama and started the bus boycotts there, what was the philosophy of the civil rights movement as you saw it then, more than 10 years ago?
Well, I would say then the philosophy was that we must go all out to use legal and nonviolent methods to gain full citizenship rights for the Negro people of our country. Of course, that particular struggle and that philosophy centered on breaking down all of the barriers of legal segregation. So I would say that in that period, the basic thrust for the gaining of citizenship rights for Negroes was to end the humiliation surrounding the whole system of legal segregation.
Dr. King, was there something peculiar to the place where you started and the kind of people you attracted? I mean by that, there was a strong attachment on the part of your parishioners in Montgomery to the church. They were older people, weren't they?
Yes, I would say by and large they were older people who participated in the boycott because they were the ones using the bus more than anybody else. And Montgomery was a community predominantly church-centered, so that it was very easy to get to the vast majority of Negroes because they were in some way connected with a church in the community.
Sir, in addition to your commitment to the idea of nonviolence, wasn't it also the only thing you could do, the white community having the monopoly on violence, that if you had tried violence, they would have met it with violence? It was the only device open to you, wasn't it?
Well, I'll put it another way, that morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem. We were seeking to establish a just society. And it was my feeling then, and it is my feeling now, that violence is certainly much more socially destructive, and it creates many more social problems than it solves. So I was led to nonviolence for these moral reasons. Now, there is no doubt about the fact that in our struggle in Montgomery and all over the United States for that matter, nonviolence is also practically sound. It would just be impractical for the Negro to turn to violence. He has neither the instruments nor the techniques of violence. We are about 10 or 11% of the total population of the nation, and I would say we're about 1/10 tenths of 1% of the firepower. So it would just be totally impractical and unwise and unrealistic for the Negro to think of violence. Well, I saw this in the beginning in Montgomery, but this wasn't the basic reason that I turned to nonviolence and that I believed in it as a philosophy. I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
Is there something about nonviolence that made it, and I use that in the past tense, that made it more useful among Southern Negroes than the ghetto Negroes of the North?
I wouldn't say there's anything that makes it more useful to Southern Negroes. I think it is true that we've had more nonviolent movements in the South because the problem for many years was more crystallized and, in a sense, more visible in the South. We didn't have many civil rights activities on a massive scale in the North until 3 or 4 years ago. So I would say that we just haven't had a chance to experiment on a broad scale with nonviolence in the Northern ghetto. I have the feeling that nonviolence is as applicable and workable in the Northern ghetto as it is in the South. There's a larger job there. The frustrations at points are much deeper. The bitterness is deeper. And I think that's because in the South, we can see pockets of progress here and there. We've really made some strides that are very visible, and every Southern Negro knows that he can do things today that he couldn't do 4 or 5 years ago. Whereas in the North, the Negro sees only retrogress, and he doesn't find it as easy to get his vision centered on his target, the target of opposition, as he does in the South. Consequently, this is made for despair and at many points cynicism, a feeling that you can't win. And it simply means that we've got to develop in the North a massive job of organization and mobilizing forces and resources to deal with the problem in the urban ghettos of the North, just as we've done it in the South.
Well, in the South, particularly in Alabama, you had visible villains, Jim Clark, Bull Connor, cattle prods, police dogs. But in the North, you don't have those visible villains. Isn't it hard to get your people aroused and directed at something that isn't visible?
Well, that's exactly right. And this is what I was saying when I said it's harder to see a target. In the South, in the nonviolent movement, we were aided always, on the whole, by the brutality of our opponent. It isn't the same way in the North. The other thing is that you don't have legal segregation in the North as you do in the South. So it is much more difficult to get people to see exactly what you're doing, but it isn't an impossible job. It's a hard, it's a tedious job at times to get people to be aroused from their apathetic slumbers, but I still feel that Negroes in the North can be motivated just as they were motivated in the South. And I think as time goes on with the growing economic deprivation in the Negro community, it will even be easier because people will come to see that not only is something wrong in general, but something is wrong in particular in their own economic and housing situations.
Well, what is it? I mean, how do you find it? It's very subtle in the North, is it not?
It's subtle, but it's becoming much more visible. Anybody can see that the schools are more segregated in the North today than they were in 1954 when the Supreme Court rendered its decision declaring segregation unconstitutional. Anybody can look around the ghetto and see that ghetto schools are predominantly segregated and devoid of quality. Anyone who moves through a major ghetto of our country will see the housing conditions. People don't have to be reminded that they are forced to live in slums in many instances, and they're often rat-infested, vermin-filled slums. And it isn't too hard to see the exploitation that the Negro confronts in the ghetto, where he is forced to pay more for less and constantly trying to make ends meet, but because of either no job as a result of unemployment or a job that is so economically unprofitable that the person can't make ends meet. And I think they see all of these things, and more they are coming to see them, because before the people of the North were looking to the South and they supported the struggles of the South. Now they are coming to see that their problems are very real and they've got organized to grapple with them.
Was there something hypocritical about the fact that the South existed and the North could point the finger? And then when the Civil Rights Acts were passed in the early 60s, you couldn't point the finger anymore?
Well, there was no doubt about the hypocrisy of large segments of the nation on the whole question of racial equality. I think the best example is that many of the senators from the North and the West, and congressmen generally, who voted for civil rights legislation in '64 and even '65 with the Voting Rights Bill, refused last year to vote for civil rights legislation because it dealt with an issue applicable to the North, the whole housing question. And this, it seems to me, was the greatest expression of the hypocrisy of many of our citizens and many of the senators and congressmen of the North.
But isn't that part of the dilemma now? That people knew that Negroes were being denied what was guaranteed to them by the Constitution, by the fact that they were citizens of this country. Then when they were given those rights, do you feel the white community said, well, we've given them all that we have, now it's up to them?
Well, I think the dilemma is much deeper, and I think one during this period of transition has to be very honest with America. And honesty impels me to admit that America has broad racist elements still alive. Racism is still existing in American society in many areas of the society, North and South. And the other thing is that there has never been a single, solid, determined commitment of large segments of white America on the whole question of racial equality. I think we have to see that vacillation has always existed, ambivalence has always existed, and this to me is the so-called white backlash. It's merely a new name for an old phenomenon. I see the white backlash as a continuation of the same ambivalence and vacillation of white America on the whole question of racial justice that has existed since the founding of our nation. I think the other thing that we must see at this time is that many of the people who supported us in Selma, in Birmingham, were really outraged about the extremist behavior toward Negroes. But they were not at that moment, and they are not now, committed to genuine equality for Negroes. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee an annual income, for instance, to get rid of poverty for Negroes and all poor people. It's much easier to integrate a bus than it is to make genuine integration a reality and quality education a reality in our schools. It's much easier to integrate even a public park than it is to get rid of slums. And I think we are in a new era, a new phase of the struggle, where we have moved from a struggle for decency, which characterized our struggle for 10 or 12 years, to a struggle for genuine equality. And this is where we're getting the resistance, because there was never any intention to go this far. People were reacting to Bull Connor and to Jim Clark rather than acting in good faith for the realization of genuine equality.
Do you think white people in this country, and I'm talking about non-segregationists, people devoid or thinking they're devoid of racism, do you have any idea of what they want the Negro to be in America?
Well, it depends on the level that we are talking here, because I think you have to make a distinction between the people who are genuinely and absolutely committed in the white community on the question of racial equality. And I must confess that I think they're in a very small minority. I think the vast majority of white Americans will go but so far. It's a kind of installment plan for equality, and they are always looking for an excuse to go but so far.
Why are they looking for the excuse? What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
That's a part of it, and that grows out of something else. You can't thingify anything without depersonalizing that something. If you use something as a means to an end, at that moment you make it a thing and you depersonalize it. The fact is that the Negro was a slave in this country for 244 years. That was a willful thing that was done. The Negro was brought here in chains, treated in very inhuman fashion. And this led to the thingification of the Negro. So he was not looked upon as a person. He was not looked upon as a human being with the same status and worth as other human beings. And the other thing is that human beings cannot continue to do wrong without eventually rationalizing that wrong. So slavery was justified morally, biologically, theoretically, scientifically, everything else. And it seems to me that white America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma, and that can never be overlooked. So I think these things are absolutely necessary. The other thing is that America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land, nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps. But it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Apart from wanting to live better, which all of us want to do, to raise one's children in a better way, to be better, does the Negro in America know what he wants to be?
I'm convinced that almost every Negro in this country, other than those who have been so scarred by the system that they've become pathological in the process, and we all have to battle with pathology, and nobody really knows what it means to be a Negro unless one can really experience it. And I know we all have to battle with this constant drain of a feeling of nobodiness. But in spite of this, I think the vast majority of Negroes in this country know that they want to be people, they want to be men, they want equality, period. It just boils down to that. And we haven't been able to be people. We haven't been men because of all of the conditions that we've lived with and the syndrome of deprivation surrounding conditions, whether it's in housing, in the economic area, or in schools, or in the vicious credit practices that we face in the ghetto, and all of the problems of closed doors and constant defeats. But in spite of all this, I think we all know basically that we want to be men. We want to be persons judged not on the basis of the color of our skin, but on the basis of the content of our character.
But you know that many young Negroes don't want anything that smacks of the American white middle class. But do they want something that smacks of whatever is the black middle class? Or do they just not want bourgeois values, which after all, are the basis of this democracy?
Well, I think we have to see what they are saying. I would be the first to agree that integration does not mean giving up everything that has an Afro-American taint, so to speak, a background. I think there are certain unique things within any culture and certain cultural patterns that when you get to the process of amalgamation can really lift the whole culture. And it seems to me that integration at its best is the opportunity to participate in the beauty of diversity. I think the other thing that we've got to see is that these young people are saying that there must be a revolution of values in our country. As Jimmy Baldwin said on one occasion, what advantage is there in being integrated into a burning house? And I feel that there is a need for a revolution of values in America, because some of the values that presently exist are certainly out of line with the values and the idealistic structure that brought our nation into being. Unfortunately, we haven't been true to these ideals, and many of the values of so-called white middle-class society are values that need to be reviewed and re-evaluated, and in a real sense, they need to be changed. So I think the young people in the Negro community who are raising these questions are raising some very profound questions about our total society. In other words, they are saying that there must be a restructuring of the architecture of our society where values are concerned. And with this, I would agree with. So in the quest for integration, I think we can offer our whole nation something, because there are three evils in our nation. It's not only racism, but economic exploitation of poverty would be one, and then militarism. And I think in a sense, and in a very real sense, these three are tied inextricably together, and we aren't going to get rid of one without getting rid of the other.
When you stood on the Lincoln Memorial that day in August '63, you said, "I had a dream." Did that dream envision that you could see a war in Asia preventing the federal government doing for the Negroes, preventing the society doing for the Negroes, that which you think had to be done?
No, I didn't envision that then. I must confess that that period was a great period of hope for me. And I'm sure for many others all across the nation, many of the Negroes who had about lost hope, saw a solid decade of progress in the South. And in 1954, which was, 64, 1963, 9 years after the Supreme Court's decision to be in the March on Washington, meant a great deal. It was a high moment, a great watershed moment. But I must confess that that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years, and I would say over the last few months. I've gone through a lot of soul-searching and agonizing moments. And I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is that we still have a long, long way to go and that we are involved in a war on Asian soil, which, if not checked and stopped, can poison the very soul of our nation.
Dr. King, even if there had not been a war in Asia, would you still not have had this nightmare insofar as the Negro movement for equality then touched on two things that the white community holds sacred, their children and their property?
Oh, I have no doubt that we would have encountered great difficulties, great problems of resistance if the war had not been in existence. So that I'm not going to say that all of our problems will be solved if the war in Vietnam is ended. But I do say that the war makes it infinitely more difficult to deal with these problems. When a nation becomes obsessed with the guns of war, it loses its social perspective, and programs of social uplift suffer. This is just a fact of history, so that we do face many more difficulties as a result of the war. It's much more difficult to really arouse a conscience during a time of war. I noticed the other day, some weeks ago, a Negro was shot down in Chicago, and it was a clear case of police brutality. That was on page 30 of the paper, but on page 1 at the top was 780 Viet Cong killed. That is something about a war like this that makes people insensitive. It dulls the conscience. It strengthens the forces of reaction, and it brings into being bitterness and hatred and violence. And it strengthened the military-industrial complex of our country, and it's made our job much more difficult, because I think we can go along with some programs, if we didn't have this war on our hands, that would cause people to adjust to new developments, just as they did in the South. They said they'd never ride the bus with us, blood would flow in the streets, they wouldn't go to school, and all of these things. But when people came to see that they had to do it because the law insisted, they finally adjusted. And I think white people all over this country will adjust once the nation makes it clear that in schools and housing, we've got to learn to live together as brothers. I think the biggest problem now is that we got our gains over the last 12 years at bargain rate, so to speak. Didn't cost the nation anything. In fact, it helped the economic side of the nation to integrate lunch counters and public accommodations. It didn't cost the nation anything to get the right to vote established. And now we are confronting issues that cannot be solved without costing the nation billions of dollars. Now, I think this is where we're getting our greatest resistance. They may put it on many other things, but we can't get rid of slums and poverty without it costing the nation something.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking.
So guys, thank you for sticking with that video. I know normally it's a lot of me talking, just kind of rolling through the political stories of the day. And I was looking at the comments and looking at the numbers, and basically everybody stayed. So I want to thank you for that. So many points, right? So many points, so many things that he talked about then that you could literally pick him up and put him in today's time that we're still talking about today. I think for me, the biggest thing that stuck out was almost his rebuke of the I have a dream. Not necessarily that I have a dream, but how his mind shifted from it, especially what we talked about at the top of the show, where so many people are quoting the I have the dream speech, right? And have almost caricaturized him and caricaturized the movement that he stood for, and yet will be in positions of power and not push for legislation that completes that dream. Even him, if you noticed, if you what he was talking about, you know, back then, okay, so we're talking about the South and the North, and how some senators of the North would only do but so much. Well, what does that sound like now? Your what's the word I'm looking for? Your neoliberal white people, right? I don't have any other words to say. I really don't have any other words to say. But your neoliberal white people that think they are doing something and think they are in allyship, when underneath it all, they are still operating in anti-racism against Black people. It just may not be so harshly aggressive as like a Trump, right? But it's those microaggressions. It is that position that you are in a position of power, and yet you still will not give a boot nor a strap to the Black man and the Black woman. And him, I quoted something in the comments when he said, we want to be men. Keep in mind at that time, he is still talking about men and women, but also still thinking about how we refer to ourselves. Someone pointed out in the comments about how Negro was still just acceptable, like 50 years ago. Well, our society at large talking about men being the standard, not really issuing in women at the time. But be clear, he is talking about men and women, but for the sake of that conversation and in that context, men were the end all be all, if you will. And so that's why he was saying that. I think for me also, points that stuck out, really that neoliberalism is what really got me. And then just also about discounting the fact that unlike every other immigrant, Black people were not immigrants. The Afro man, the Afro woman, the African man and woman, they were not immigrants. They were forcefully brought here. And then after being forcefully brought here, we are talking about the beating, the murders, the rape of men, women, and children by their white masters, male and female. We really didn't talk about that a lot in school when in relation to Black history. We talked about the women being raped. The men were being raped as well. And it's not a competition by means, but men were being raped. Children sold off as sex slaves, families desecrated, ripped apart, pulled apart for decades. And then you issue in when he says, I see the super comment there. I'm gonna pull you up, but I'm gonna keep talking, but I'm gonna pull you up. Definitely, guys, if you want to, you can send super comments and super chats. He was more disappointed in the white moderate than the Klansman. Exactly, because the white moderate was the ally. So allies listening, take note. That was the knife in the back that you didn't see coming. The Klansman you see coming. A Trump you see coming, right? The Proud Boys you see coming. It is the neoliberal white moderate that is the knife in the back that you don't see, because that's the ally. And so allies, I would ask you to really take it in and self-reflect and do true allyship. But what was I saying? Yeah. So we're talking about the desecration of families. We're talking about the separation of families. We're talking about slavery being a thing. And then when it wasn't a thing, you saw America, especially when we're talking about bootstraps, pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. You saw America give money, give land. Not only, I did a whole video on this on my YouTube channel. Y'all should check it out, on why Black people deserve reparations. Because you saw white America pay slave owners reparations for setting the slaves free. The slaves got nothing. We were supposed to give 40 acres. And I even unpacked that whole 40 acres and a mule. Side note, we were never really promised the mule, but I talk about that in the video, like how the mule came about. It's not funny because it's all that, but y'all know my personality. You know how I be. But we got nothing. The 40 acres we were promised were given back to the Confederacy even after the Civil War. But going back to slavery, you saw America issue out checks to slave owners because they had to give their slaves up. We were seen as property. Slave owners got reparations. You see America giving land to poor white people because poor white people were more as an indentured servant, right? So they may have worked the fields as well, but they weren't treated like a Black person. They still got a certain level of dignity, respect. And then after all this was said and done, end up getting land and an economic base, all the while the Black man, the Black woman, the Black child literally was set free. And to say to somebody to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, as Martin was saying, you're talking about people literally. Thank you so much for the super sticker. Literally, although enslaved, depended on the slave master. You talk about people that can't read, people that can't write. They only know one thing: pick cotton, try not to get raped by the slave master and whoever else on the plantation that has a sadistic appetite for rape. You're talking about people that have no economic base, nothing, and you free them and basically throw them out there and say, do it yourself. People have more empathy and concern for people who let a dog outside and let it be. If you say, I don't want my dog no more, I'm gonna just throw it away. And then by no way am I comparing Black people to dogs, because that has been happening. But what I want to do is talk about a point. You will turn a dog loose and people will whole heart will melt. Oh my gosh, how did you just let the dog go? Why didn't you give it to a shelter? Okay, those are points. Now take that. Black people are not dogs. You're talking about some people who literally depend on the slave master, no fault of their own. Again, decades on decades on decades of being ripped apart, people not knowing how to read, write, work, but pick cotton and say, oh, okay, you free, go ahead. What exactly what was we supposed to do? And so you see a movement of people returning to the slave master and working, not really working, not being paid a livable wage, which we're still fighting for today, but working for the job that they had while they were enslaved because they knew nothing. And America did not set the Black family, the Black man, the Black woman, the Black child up for success after that. And not only that, then you start seeing the police force increase, police force coming from slave catchers, people who were trying to run away. You see that increase, and you see policing in a whole new light, as the foundation is today. And then you see laws passed by people in power that disproportionately go after Black folks. You see the prison industrialized complex come about, where laws are put on the books to where we are building and funding prisons, funding private prisons. You mean by people's bodies? You mean you are writing laws like loitering laws, hanging out somewhere and arresting Black folks and throwing them into jail. And now this person is profiting off of a body that is incarcerated from the state. And you talk about how Black people are this, Black people that. Are you kidding me? This country has literally systematically precision targeted Black folks. This country still makes money off of incarcerated Black people. Now, are there other people that are in jail and all of that? Yes. But when we look at the numbers, who is disproportionately affected? Black folks. Still making money off us. Free labor. Slave labor. So when we start to quote Martin and I have a dream and all these other things, everything that he just said in this 26-minute interview is like you can literally pick him up, put him in 2021, and all that stuff still applies. Have we made strides? Absolutely. By no way am I saying, we have not come a long way as a people. Baby, still we rise. After every roadblock you put in front of us, still we rise. But look how far we have to rise to get there. And then look how our counterparts, because we're talking about equality and equity, meaning we all need to be on the same level field. Look how much they have to rise compared to us. Look how much we have to code switch. Look how much we have to live in like this double consciousness of being our true selves and then being what is acceptable to the public and the society at large to not be viewed as a threat. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so layered, it's so deep. And so I thought it was just important that we spend some time to actually listen to Martin in that particular interview and not necessarily, I dare not say quote cute quotes from I Have a Dream, because it's not cute quotes. He was actually making a real speech. But it has been caricatured over the years and been used like his daughter said, as a way to delay justice. Even like these calls for civility and unity from this insurrection attempt that we saw last week. What would Martin Luther King do? Call for justice and accountability. If you got to know the authentic king, like his daughter said, and not the caricature that has been created. I got questions. Thank you so much for the super comment. Y'all go ahead and send those super chats and super comments in if you want to, because we're going to be ending the show pretty quickly. We're already at 49 minutes. Hey, fam, I got to go. Wanted to give everyone a quick goodbye. Oh, yeah, that's right. I leave tomorrow for my next assignment. I'm going to miss being on here, but the last part about costing billions, it hit different. Yeah, so quick update. I had a one-on-one with I Got Questions. Again, if you want to do that, I'm dropping the link in the chat right now. If you want to schedule your one-on-one Zoom and we can just chit and chat, it is a Patreon feature, so you have to be a Patreon member. Y'all know she's a travel nurse. She's our unofficial nurse of the show, but she is going out to the Bay Area to work an assignment. I think it was for about 8 weeks. So if y'all could just surround her in the comments real quick, wish her well. We are definitely praying for her that she is safe. So thank you so much for your support. I Got Questions. You always come through. You always come through. Excuse me. So yeah, I just thought it was very, very important. Somebody said if you want to watch a good documentary about Black people, in the jail system, watch 13th on Netflix. I might have to stream that because I think you can do Netflix watch parties now. I might have to figure out how to stream that, and we might do that one night. Watch 13th, because I've watched that and it is really, really good. But if you want to watch it on your own, it's very educational. I would even say it's okay for kids too. Like I wouldn't feel a type of way watching that with like my 13-year-old niece. So definitely 13th on Netflix. It's a great, I mean, it's not everything in depth, but it is a great breakdown and walk you through the history of how we got here. Crystal Osborne, shout out to you. Thank you so much. I want to learn more on this and teach my children, but we weren't taught everything in school. What sources do you recommend for me to check out? Well, you can watch the 13th on Netflix if you want to. That's something to watch, right? So you can, I think that'll be a good resource. That is where I've directed people, because it runs through certain things, and then you can pull out each segment, each era in time, and Google and talk about it and research and talk about it with your kids. Also, check out the 1619 Project. What's so interesting is today, the Trump administration on Martin Luther King Day came out with the 17, what was it called? Hold on, somebody sent it to me. The 1776, basically trying to make an excuse for the fact that the founders had slaves and dared to use Frederick Douglass images and Martin Luther King's images in it, almost in a white lash, right? A white backlash to the 1619 Project, calling a thing a thing. Like one of the things me and I Got Questions was talking about on our one-on-one today is the cookie is crumbling for America in this idea of American exceptionalism. For so long, we have lied to ourselves thinking that America was so great, and not we, because Black folks already knew what it was. But we at large, Americans, have lied to ourselves for so long, saying that America was so great, not even taking a knock at Make America Great Again, or that we had this American exceptionalism, when America has been a dark and devastating place. Not only did this country kill the indigenous and relegate them to certain areas right now, you enslave the Black person and continue to demonize their skin tone to this day. You locked up Japanese descendants after Pearl Harbor from nowhere. Well, not from nowhere, but because you were scared that they was spies or something. Side note, Japanese immigrants, descendants in America got paid reparations. Literally like a couple years ago. Like literally not that long ago. In that video that I did on YouTube about reparations, we talk about that too. So again, I make the case for why Black people deserve reparations. But yeah, Crystal, those are some resources that I would say start at. And as you read and learn, definitely Google to expand your knowledge on that. Karen, Q, what do you think is the most single important move for the African Americans and the allies to do right now in 2021 to hold the liberal/moderate government accountable? Which is first? Okay, which is first? I feel like I can't. I don't want to weigh it. I have two things that are tied. I don't have a first because they're both super imperative. And I mentioned them earlier in this video. You want to hold them accountable? Make sure they push and pass the George Floyd Policing Act, because police are a threat to Black folks. And not all. I hate that I always have to say this. Not all cops are bad. We know it's some good cops, but it's some bad ones in there. And we can't tell who is who based on looking. So I don't know who I'm going to run into at the time. George Floyd Policing Act, hold police accountable so that they cannot indiscriminately kill Black folks. Start investigating police themselves. When we come to find out it's off-duty cops at the Trump rally, you look at their Facebook, it's all kind of propaganda and shenanigans, everything else. Why y'all not pulling these folks off the police force? You are endangering people who look like me, brown folks, disabled folks, word to Elijah McClain, by not holding police accountable. By not holding those that we entrust with power, that we entrust to keep the peace. A police officer is a peacekeeper. By not holding them accountable, you let them create a culture and permeate a culture of I can do whatever I want and get away with it. That's one, and they need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So we need to hold them accountable to that, because every American should have access to the ballot. And by every American having access to the ballot, we can have correct representation. We can vote on things that are actually going to help the people. I ain't never seen somebody try so hard for something to not happen if they weren't scared about it. And there is one political party, one major political party, that is almost a pillar of their foundation to make sure certain people do not vote. Why? So I don't have one. Those are the first two most important things. Most important things, hands down. And then I just got to throw in there real quick, student loan cancellation. Y'all, that's those don't meet the bar, but I always got to, if you ask me what's on my heart, that's student loan. But that's not the same thing, okay? That's not the same thing. So yeah, let me scroll through here. Let me scroll through real quick. Okay. So yeah, guys. So that's I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed. A lot to think about. Lot to discuss amongst yourselves with your families. What I'll do, I'll update. Let me see. Well, oh no, it'll be on replay. So if you ever want to go back and watch the interview, you could just replay this video and watch that interview. Correct, Crystal. It sure would. Watch that interview. And yeah, I'm super excited about what's upcoming. I want to transition really quickly. Talk to the interns today. Talk to the interns today. Got some great stuff coming. Oh, Lakeisha Lee, thank you so much. Before I move on to that, I say this with all due respect to our allies. You have seen what we have suffered. Please know it is your job to correct the injustices minorities are suffering from. We can't fix what we didn't create or profit from. That last line. It's the profiteering for me. Wow. That was, yeah. Oh man, I forgot. Thank you so much for reminding me. I didn't set that up. Let me put that on my list. Yes, we will do a watch party for the inauguration. I am so sorry. I have not. Let me put that on my to-do list. Watch party. Yes, we will do that watch party. Thank you for that comment. We'll do that for inauguration. We will. So I'll be sending the link to that. That'll be a free thing. I won't be charging for that. So that'll be free if y'all wanna hop on. We'll do that down here. We'll stream that thing. So guys, I know not a lot of giddiness and a lot of excitement like we normally do on our show here. But I thought that it was very important. I thought that it was very important to watch that video in totality, and especially show people a side that they hadn't seen outside of the clips. Yeah, but what I was saying was I talked to the interns. We have some stuff coming for February. I'm super excited about. We are going to do a YouTube blitz in February. So we are dropping a video every day in the month of February. And we are going to be looking at unsung heroes. We watched Martin today. We all know who Martin is, but we did a deeper dive, right? And so what I told the interns was, we know who Martin is. We know who Malcolm is. We know who Rosa is. I want to tell people who Harriet Tubman's number 2 is, right? Like, who was Harriet Tubman conferring with on the side that was helping her with the Underground Railroad? Like, let's find that person. and bring them to the forelight. So we are going to be talking about a lot of unsung Black heroes and Black history that you may or may not know about. So our goal is to drop a video every day in the month of February. Definitely, it is definitely going to be a challenge, but I think myself and the team is great. I think we'll be able to rise to the occasion and do that. Also, I am going to share you all. I hadn't posted this on Instagram or TikTok or any of my socials, but I just want to show you all a little promo. Maybe you're interested, maybe you're not. It is for the Patreon. But you know, I am on my bodybuilding journey and I want you all to come along with me. So I'm going to show you a little promo for my bodybuilding journey that's going to be on the Patreon. Okay. So hold on, let me make sure I got it queued up right. Okay. So let's see here. I want to show you this and then we're going to end the show after it. Okay. I'm gonna actually do that.
Come without truth. Peace does not come before salvation, and salvation does not come without truth. I am for truth no matter who tells me. I'm for justice no matter who it is for or against.
Okay, guys. So definitely a different side. But all of that content is going to be on the Patreon. So if you are interested in that, I just dropped the link again. You can join the Patreon and join the bodybuilding tier. There are 5 tiers on Patreon. Feel free to join any of them. I am 14 weeks into my prep, meaning I've been prepping, like dieting, working out for this particular show for 14 weeks. In that 14 weeks, I have lost 20 pounds, which is crazy, but I'm still holding a lot of my mass and size. So I've dropped 20 pounds and I have 13 weeks to go. Actually, I'm 14 weeks in. I have 13 weeks to go into the actual show. So if you want to come along, see the workouts, see what I'm eating. I'll show you my meal plan. I'll show you the different stretches I'm doing, just even my mental state as I kind of like, just diet down. You can join that on the Patreon. Okay. So, thank you all so much for your ongoing support. I appreciate and definitely love you all for pouring into me tomorrow. We'll be live at 5. We're expecting about over 100 pardons or so to come on in from Trump. So, all that shenanigans. We'll be back to the normal flow of the show tomorrow and talking about all that shenanigans and chicanery. So, guys, have a great evening. Y'all are so silly. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the comments. Now, don't sexualize me. I work hard on my body. I'm serious about this. I'm not trying to be sexualized now. Okay. Thank you though. Thank you. No, it wasn't yoga. It was a stretch. I wasn't actually doing yoga, but yeah. Thank you guys again. I'm gonna drop the link one more time. Good night. Have a great night. If you want to join, also get your Goalie Gummies 20% off. That link is there as well. Until tomorrow, guys, it's been the Q with Q, our daily political briefing, and I'll see you, Jesus willing, tomorrow. A lot of people watched it, but nobody's watching day to day, all day, unless you're me and just love this stuff. Procedures are okay, but we want to know, where do you stand? And so I think the more that politicians stop trying to be politicians and be people, then that will engage voters. We reject alternative facts, so come on in here and let me educate you on the facts.